The original Sonic the Hedgehog, the one that started it all. Nowadays I see a lot of people talk down on this game, either taking the whole Sonic was never good, he's a soulless corporate creation with a gimmick that'll never work stance, or complaining about how hard the levels are and how you can't spin dash. While I won't lie and say that the latter group isn't partially right and the game hasn't particularly aged well, this game is incredible for 1991 standards. It was one of the first games, along with Street Fighter II, to feature expressive characters who are depicted that way through the graphics, not to mention this most important achievement, ending Nintendo's nigh monopoly on the video game console market at the time, leading to the different options we have now. I think the game is pretty good for its time. Sure, they were still trying to figure out what Sonic is, there's some mild trial and error there, the spike bug, and the slow levels don't work well with a character who moves fast, but this game deserves respect. Now that I'm done talking about my opinion on the game, let's get to what this video is about. On January 1st, 2021, a prototype of this game was released by Hidden Palace after someone named Buckaroo found it on eBay of all places in 2020. For nearly 30 years, there were no prototypes available of Sonic the Hedgehog 1, just screenshots in the various officially released versions of the game. But despite that, this obviously isn't the only prototype of the game, just the only prototype we have publicly available right now. I mean, this game was in development for nearly a year and a half, so there's gotta be more than that. Well, there is, and today I'll be discussing that. There are multiple other prototypes that are hard to find information on, but are chronicled by the cutting room floor, so big thanks to them. One of these early prototypes has a title screen that doesn't scroll, which can be seen in this video featuring the game running on a Sega Terra drive, which was an obscure Japan-exclusive IBM PC with a Mega Drive built into it. This is what the demo featuring Sonic and his scrap girlfriend character Madonna zooming into the screen that you may have seen before was running on, and that demo was meant to be played in stores to show off the hardware. There's also this video that features early Sonic 1 footage that I'll link to in the description that contains a very different version of Green Hill Zone with a different version of the Hedgehog enemy who can be found in the files of the prototype we have, monitors that cycle between power-ups, wonky physics, Sonic runs way too close to the right side of the screen, the debug mode HUD is on the bottom right, the water and sky are the same color like on the title screen in the final game, and the flowers are different and the rings HUD just says ring like the prototype we have. Also, this video has a guy describe Sonic as a less renowned hedgehog, which is simultaneously the worst staging and best staging thing I've ever heard in my life. There's also some screenshots of a version similar to this one that features other stages. Marble Zone's lava is different and the torches aren't lit. Spring Yard Zone, or Sparkling Zone as it was known at this point, has pink roller enemies, motobugs, and just looks different. Then there's the builds that are assumed to be the one featured at the 1991 Winter Consumer Electronics Show. This one has the press start button on the title screen. If you didn't know, the final game doesn't have one because of a glitch. Another fun fact, all of these title screens, including the final one, aren't centered properly. Hope you can sleep well knowing that information. I don't want to bore you with discussing some of the other screenshots, so if you want to take a look at them, just go to the cutting room floor page I linked. As for interesting things about this build, there's no background in Labyrinth Zone, the flying saucers, and yes, since they're identifiable, they're not UFOs, they're flying saucers that are seen in Marble Zone in the release prototype are red instead of green here. The debug mode is in the score like the release prototype in the final game now. We get a better look at the early lava, and the special stage blocks are all yellow. There's also another video using early footage very similar to the release prototype that I'll link below. Now, before I get to the final prototype, I think it's time we talk about some unreleased ports. In 1991, the Italian gaming magazine, The Games Machine, had an article on home computer ports of Sonic 1, mainly an Amiga one. It featured 2 screenshots of this version, though gaming magazines used to use mock-ups instead of actual footage all the time back in the day, so maybe take these with a grain of salt. One depicting gameplay with a strange level design, and another depicting a weird title screen. There's not really any more information than that, and the Lost Media Wiki erroneously uses screenshots from a fan-made demo and is just filled with misinformation. You guys gotta fix that. That being said, yeah, Sega dodged a bullet there. Releasing the killer app of their own system to home computers would have been a massive mistake. They were also going to re-release Sonic 1 on the Sega CD, but it was scrapped in favor of Sonic CD. Not that much is known about it, and I doubt there's actually a prototype of it, but you never know. I mean, there may actually be one, and it may have served as the basis for Sonic CD, which would make sense as Sonic CD basically reuses level themes from Sonic 1. Palm Tree Panic is Green Hill, the scrapped R2 was going to be like Marble Zone, Collision Chaos is Spring Yard, Tidal Tempest is Labyrinth, Stardust Speedway is Starlight, and Metallic Madness is Scrap Brain. Yeah, I know there's Quartz Quadrant and Wacky Workbench in between Tidal Tempest and Stardust Speedway. These may have been additional levels in the Sonic 1 port though, but there's no evidence of anything relating to a port of Sonic 1 hiding in the files of the earliest known prototype of Sonic CD in 1992. Also, there was going to be a Sega CD port of Sonic 2, but it was canceled because Sonic 2 didn't sell well in Japan. Yeah, that obscure game Sonic 2, I doubt you've ever heard of it. But us Sonic fans just appreciate Sega of Japan's brain-dead sense of arrogance and elitism so much. Anyways, the last prototype that I'll be discussing is the 1990 Tokyo Toy Show prototype. It's the one I want most, but unfortunately it might be lost forever. It's the earliest prototype and showing of the game too. All we have left of it are screenshots. It features a title screen similar to the final, except on a black background, and the emblem is actually centered. It was also seemingly animated like the final. The demo seems to consist entirely of an early Green Hill Zone that's much more surreal and fantastical, more in line with other family-oriented Japanese action games of the time, rather than the distinct, more cartoony sci-fi aesthetic that the series is known for, or at least was known for. Sonic's stance is different as he's got his arms spread out to his side. His running animation is similar though. Next we see this blue enemy that appears in one of Naoto Oshima's pieces of concept art for the game, yet another relic of when the game was a less unique fantasy game. Then we see a snazzy sign that says, "You are welcome," along with some text below it that's unreadable because Sonic's in the way. Since the release of this video, new screenshots have come out that showed that the sign says "Never Open" in the way. Then giant red Japanese text reading "Debut Approaching" appears, which is where the demo seemingly ends. It also supposedly had the early version of Green Hill that can be heard in the Terra Drive store demo that I talked about. Now, it's been said to be an unplayable demo, but Yuji Naka has said that it was playable. But this is also the guy who said he removed Madonna from the game and she never made it past the concept stages, when that's not true. And also he committed insider trading. So why should we trust this guy? Besides, it's called the Tokyo Toy Show Demo, and demo in 1990 did not mean playable section of the game like it does now, but a demonstration of how the game would play if you could play it. He also said the Sonic team intended to put the demo on Sonic Mega Collection, but Sega wasn't able to find it. But also, they weren't able to put Sonic Erasers, Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, or Chaotix on Sonic Gems Collection, and all of those except Sega Sonic are easily emulatable, so maybe they're just lazy. I'm not gonna lie, I'm generally not an optimist, and these theories might be stretches, but I don't think we're screwed. In this picture, you can see the demo playing on 2 monitors, which might mean there was more than one copy produced. But it could also mean they were just able to display the demo on more than one monitor. Also, somebody could have stolen it like with Sonic 2. But if either of those situations aren't the case, then these other prototypes I've discussed might have some leftover data from this build that we can see if we find them. And this isn't much of a stretch either, as the prototype that we do have has an unused object called Object 6 that follows the HUD and is a couple of red pixels and is theorized to be a leftover of the debut approaching text, which I'm inclined to believe, as Objects 2 and 3 have code that can be seen in the Sega R&D news footage dating all the way back to February of 1990, 4 months before the Tokyo Toy Show. These were removed from the final game, so other leftovers from this demo may have been removed from that prototype as well. So yeah, I encourage anyone interested enough to join the search, at least for the other prototypes, because despite them not being terribly interesting, they may have some interesting leftovers from the Tokyo Toy Show demo. So if you have the money, just pull a buckaroo and see if we're lucky enough to find something on eBay. Now let's talk about some of the development of Sonic Adventure and why you should care about the scrapped Sega Saturn version. Now I'm pretty sure at this point, you already know the story of Sonic Extreme, but if you don't, here's a not so quick rundown. After Sonic 2 was finished, Sega Technical Institute, or STI, split into 2 halves. The Japanese devs worked on Sonic 3, while the American devs worked on Sonic Spinball. After the American team got done with Sonic Spinball, they started working on a new Sonic project. They pitched a game based on the Saturday morning cartoon to Yuji Naka, which he rejected. Then they pitched a 3D game for the 32X that also took inspiration from the Saturday morning cartoon, to which Naka merely said, "Good luck." This project eventually morphed into a game for the Saturn called Sonic Extreme. Meanwhile, a team in Japan that consisted of people who worked on Sonic 1 but didn't move to the States had finished working on projects that successfully made their way to the Mega Drive's add-ons, Sonic CD for the Mega CD, and Chaotix for the 32X. And after wrapping up work for Sonic and Knuckles, the Japanese team working for STI moved back to Japan and reconvened with the Chaotix dev team to reform Sonic Team, which hadn't officially made a game under that name since the first Sonic the Hedgehog. However, it seemed they were burnt out on the Sonic formula, as Chaotix doesn't even star Sonic or Tails and includes strange gimmicks. So instead of creating a new Sonic project, Sonic Team instead worked on Nights into Dreams, which I honestly believe to be the best game to be released under the Sonic Team name. Yes, even better than the actual Sonic games by them, but this doesn't count the STI games. Anyways, the remaining staff at STI was split between working on Comic Zone and the Ooze for the Genesis and Sonic Extreme. However, the project suffered from a severe lack of focus and was cancelled. Honestly, if it had been released, it would have been the Sonic 06 for 1996. They even tried to give Sonic a princess girlfriend for this game, though she isn't a human. So yeah, hopefully Sega had learned to can blatantly unfinished games with a lack of focus, feature creep, and a Princess Peach for Sonic. Oh, what's the point of this? Anyways, the real nail in the coffin for the project was the developers, including director Chris Sen, getting physically sick due to overworking themselves trying to meet the Christmas 1996 deadline, and resorting to using the Nights engine to speed up the development process, which pissed off Yuji Naka. So ends the story of Sonic Extreme. So after working on Nights and with Sonic Extreme being cancelled, Sonic Team finally decided to work on a new mainline 3D Sonic title. And they helped Traveler's Tales with their Sonic games. And they made Burning Rangers because they can't focus too much energy on their namesake. At the same time though, they were receiving letters from Japanese fans of Nights asking who Sonic was. That's how bad the drought was. But also, the Mega Drive wasn't very popular in Japan in the first place, even losing the console wars to the PC engine over there. But Contrary to how it was in the West, the Sega Saturn was quite popular in Japan thanks in part to excellent marketing and a library that filled the JRPG gap left by the Nintendo 64. So Sonic Team made it their mission to introduce Sonic to Japanese gamers while still giving longtime fans a treat in the form of the compilation Sonic Jam. This was a collection featuring Sonic's 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles with lock-on technology for Sonic and Knuckles, along with time attack and special stage modes, difficulty selection, and an optional spin dash for Sonic 1. These features were able to be included because these aren't direct emulations of the Mega Drive hardware, but rather direct ports to the Sega Saturn, since emulating the lock-on games might have been impossible. Though, this does lead to sound issues because it's CD audio now and it takes forever to load. And despite adding the spin dash to Sonic 1, they forgot to add Tails' ability to fly to Sonic 2. But it's a great collection, and the collection wasn't the only part of the game. The other half of the game was the Sonic World mode, a full 3D hub world where you can complete missions, go to museums and look at the goated Harmony artwork, listen to tunes, and watch sick Japanese commercials, and also touch Miles. Anyways, this mode gives us a glimpse of what the next Sonic game would look like. And now with all of that out of the way, it's finally time to talk about the prototype. We currently only have screenshots for Sonic Adventure on the Saturn, and I'll say where they came from later. One featuring Sonic and Tails flying by Angel Island, one featuring Sonic and Tails flying on what I assume to be Angel Island, one was Sonic and Tails looking at the expanse of the Mystic Ruins, which includes a background that was actually included in the final game in Lost World, one featuring Sonic near what looks like where Big's house is in the final game.
It's actually Mystic Forest from Knights. I don't know how I didn't notice that, damn it.
Another of Sonic in the Mystic Ruins, and one of Sonic and Tails and Ice Cap. However, these are likely just mock-ups and not actually part of a prototype. That may be obvious to some of you, considering their use of pre-rendered backgrounds, but the game was at some point originally intended to be an RPG, so this may have been what the game was actually going to look like. Also, these were supposedly made before Sonic Jam. I love these. They're just nice to look at. The models were also later used in Sonic Jam. Modified versions were used in Sonic R, and they served as the inspiration for the special stage models in Sonic Mania. I like them a lot. Some people say you lose Sonic's silhouette with these models, but you really don't. Yes, Sonic is a very round character, but his spikes translate to polygons well in my opinion. These models can be seen in the reveal trailer for Sonic Adventure and Sky Chase. They can also be seen there in the final game, but during cutscenes the textures are changed to match the new design so you don't notice. The reason they're used is because early 3D games used low poly models when the camera was far away from the characters to save frame rate. There's also a leftover spring from Sonic Jam in the files of Sonic Adventure. I also really wonder what the story would have been in this prototype, especially since it was supposedly going to be an RPG, as all we have is that Sonic and Tails are on Angel Island, and that's it. There are some storyboards, however, that depict an alternate version of the final game's Sonic story intro that are very interesting. Now I want to address the elephant in the room, the designs, which is part of the reason I want the prototype. Yuji Naka thought that Sonic was becoming too cutesy and wanted to bring back that cool edge to Sonic. So Sega decided to hold a contest between artists to make a potential redesign. The top four were Yuji Uekawa, Satoshi Okano, Naoto Oshima, and Takumi Miyake. Let's start off with Uekawa's design. It's pretty good. All he did was make Sonic taller and give him larger quills to match his height. Satoshi Okano's design had actually been used before for a cover of Sega Saturn magazine in Japan, and it's easily my favorite. It's pretty much the same as Uekawa's, but it just has more style. While his design obviously wasn't chosen, he was actually able to use some of his art after the release of Sonic Adventure for the Japanese release of Sonic 3D Blast, which had actually released in Japan after Sonic Adventure and was the last ever Saturn game in 1999, 3 years after the rest of the world got the game. Then there's Oshima and Miyake's horrifying designs with the red eyes. Oshima's design is bad, which is sad because, well, you know, he kinda created Sonic in the first place. He has these very threatening fangs. I don't hate the idea of Sonic having fangs. In fact, he does have them in Sonic Adventure and Sonic Shuffle, but they're very understated compared to these. Miyake's design is just plain horrendous. It's not just bad for mascot design, it's just unappealing in general. It's awful and definitely shows a concerning amount of desperation on Sonic Team's part. If this is one of the best, I want to know what the other designs looked like. But they ended up going with Uekawa's design in the end. Only difference is they gave him green eyes. Now I'm talking about the redesign because it's pretty much one of the reasons a lot of people want the prototype, as it gives us a glimpse into an alternate universe where Sonic kept his classic design in his transition to 3D. Anyways, I know this video barely focused on it, even in the first half, because there's not much to say about it, but I hope the Sega Saturn prototype of Sonic Adventure gets found, because it would be a cool peek into an alternate universe. Just like Sega itself, the Sonic Lost Media community just overlooks the 3D games in favor of the 2D games, so it would be nice to get at least some more development info on this game. It's very unlikely that we'll actually find the prototype because it wasn't given to magazines and it wasn't shown off anywhere. It's probably in the hands of Sega themselves or on some disc or hard drive owned by some developer. Those screenshots were first shown at the 2016 Sonic Adventure Music Experience, and the clean scans were posted on social media after being shown in the 2020 Extra Life charity event, so it's much more likely that it's in the hands of Sega or Sonic Team. And I don't know what it would take for them to release something, but this video was just to stir up interest, which in turn might increase our chances of finding it, or at least finding out more about the development of the game. So spread the word. Somebody may know somebody who can give us some more information. But that's all we have for now. Sonic Adventure 2. Alright, we got the intro out of the way, let's get into it. The game was revealed at E3 2000 and the version showcased there resembles the final, but is actually in a very different state. The biggest thing you'll notice is that Tails, Shadow, and Rouge aren't playable in this version, as they originally weren't meant to be. Obviously, fans were extremely upset that Tails, who had been a series staple up to this point, wasn't playable. Sonic Team took this to heart, hence why he's playable in the final game, but is just a clone of Dr. Eggman. Also, having a character with as cool of a design as Shadow not be playable would be a pretty dumb move on Sonic Team's part. But it's strange that no new characters were playable in this version. Yeah, this is Eggman's first and actually only playable appearance in a mainline Sonic game, but it's not his first playable appearance ever, and obviously not his first appearance. But Sonic Team genuinely wasn't going to include the other 3 characters, but when fan demand got really high, they rushed them out and made them clones of pre-existing characters. I theorized that Rouge probably had nothing to do with Knuckles in the original game, so they needed to change her story to justify her gameplay style. The trailer still emphasizes the light versus dark theme, which is weird because there's 2 hero characters and 1 villain playable. Maybe Knuckles was intended to be an in-between, but that's weird since he isn't depicted to be anything but a hero in the final game and hadn't been a real anti-hero since Sonic Triple Trouble. Anyways, another thing noticeable in the trailer is that Sonic isn't wearing his soap shoes yet, like some of the demos we have of the game, and they're modeled differently than they are in those. His running animation is also a little different. Let's get to the levels. The only footage of City Escape is the truck part, which has a different layout, the area has different textures, the truck is modeled differently, and the skybox looks unfinished. Green Forest doesn't look different other than different layouts. The most interesting change, however, is Skyrail. Sonic is shown here, once again proving that Shadow wasn't originally playable. This is interesting, and I wonder what his purpose in the story was here. Maybe he was meeting up with Knuckles, which explains why it's in the Pumpkin Hill area. In the final game, the level ends up feeling like filler due to being given to Shadow. Cool filler, but filler nonetheless, as all you do is chase Tails, which doesn't have much bearing on what happens next, but you can leave a comment explaining why it's more important if I'm missing something, which I think I am. The fog is also missing from this level. Strangely enough though, Knuckles and Eggman's levels don't have anything that interesting about them. This prototype is interesting because of how different it is compared to the final, and it's probably still floating around somewhere as it's clearly an actual prototype on Dreamcast hardware being used in the trailer, unlike Sonic Adventure for the Saturn, which could just be mock-ups. This is probably the holy grail of 3D Sonic lost media because it's a completely different version of the game that actually existed, and that's what makes it so interesting. I really wonder what the original story was since the other 3 characters weren't playable yet. What would Tails be doing? Would Shadow have actually been the main villain? What would Rouge be like without her connection to Knuckles? The prototype may not have the answers, but if they had this much of the game worked on at this point, there's bound to be an early script somewhere that's yet to be released. I'm pretty sure these characters' inclusions in the final game are what caused the story to feel rushed and be filled with plot holes because they had to find a way to work them in. But besides that, I want to know how the game was structured as well. Were the 3 playable characters going to have separate campaigns? And is the final game structured the way it is to cover up for how short something like a slap together late into development Shadow campaign would be? Especially since it wouldn't have hub worlds like the previous game? Maybe. So how could we find this thing? I don't know. This one is probably in the hands of Sega themselves or a Sonic Team employee. Games journalists likely never had it because it was only used for the trailer. Given that this is a disc-based game, I think we might be more screwed with this one than we are with the Sonic 1 Tokyo Toy Show demo. On top of that, it's hard to find out who to contact and how to contact someone who may potentially have a disc or hard drive of it. And if it's in the hands of Sega themselves, they're obviously not going to release it. But I don't think we should give up hope. The reason I made these videos was to stir up more interest in order to increase our chances of receiving these prototypes, rather than actually trying to get anyone to conduct a search. If we can't find the prototype, maybe we can find an early script at least. Maybe Shiro Maekawa, who wrote the game, has one, and that could give us a lot of development info on the game. So recently, someone DM'd me on whatever it's called now, which you should totally follow me on, by the way, at sunshine_feeler, and sent me some information about Chao Lost Media and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. So I guess I should get this out of the way. I'm not exactly the most knowledgeable when it comes to the Chao stuff. Yes, I'm sadly not an all-knowing Sonic god. I like the Chao a lot, but I'm more of a casual Chao fan. I'm just not really into the whole time sink kind of game. So if I get something horribly wrong and embarrass myself, please correct me in the comments in the most rude way possible. But I'll try to explain what the character Chao and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle are so you understand what's being searched for. First, there's the unofficial character Chao, which consists of the neutral run Chao, dubbed the Sonic Chao, weird that it's not a hero Chao, the dark run Chao, dubbed the Shadow Chao, and the neutral fly Chao, dubbed the Night's Chao. These are unofficial because unlike the other character Chao, they're mortal. Meanwhile, the official character Chao are immortal like the Chaos Chao evolution. This group consists of the Knuckles Chao, Amy Chao, and Tails Chao. The Tails Chao is accessible by beating a certain mission in Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2, which allows you to download it to your GBA, but it could also be obtained along with the Amy and Knuckles Chao through the Nintendo GameCube Software eCatalog Summer 2003 disc. As its name implies, this disc served to catalog GameCube software, but it also had demos for games, one of those being Sonic Adventure DX. There's a section on the menu for that demo that reads Joy Carry, which was a term used in Japan to refer to transferring minigames between the GameCube and GBA. If you select it, you can download multiple minigames to your GBA. If you select the Tiny Chao Garden, you are prompted to select one of the 3 character Chao to download and transfer to your copy of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle using the GBA transfer feature. Someone going by the name of Air Conditioner got a hold of this disc and made an ISO of it, to which someone going by the name Darky Benji had ripped the Chao files for use with Fusion's Chao Editor, a popular tool for the Steam release of Sonic Adventure 2. They could also be downloaded at some of the Next Generation World Hobby Fair events held by Shogakukan. Yes, that Shogakukan. at certain stations where players could download them into a version of Tiny Chow Garden for the Game Boy Advance. It was at 2 specific events, however, players could get special, even rarer Chow available for download. Aside from also distributing the aforementioned Amy and Knuckles Chow, they had Shiny Sonic and Shadow Chow, which could also be obtained at the 17th Next Gen World Hobby Fair, held from January to February 2003. But along with those 4, they also had an even more rare Shiny Tails Chow exclusive to download at the 18th Next Gen World Hobby Fair, held on seemingly one day in June of the same year. As far as I'm aware, no one except for people who attended these events in Sega has these 3 shiny character Chow. The download stations were most likely running software similar to the software catalog on GameCube discs, so the key to getting these Chow is finding someone with those discs. That's easier said than done since there's a lot of hands in this pot. From the event holders to Nintendo, who Sega needed to get permission from to distribute the software, to Sega themselves, never mind the fact that all of this is locked to Japan. Our second chance of being able to obtain these Chow was by finding a fan that happened to go to the event and downloaded one of the rarer Chow onto their copy of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. That being said, this won't give us the actual Chow downloading software, and there's a 50-50 chance that this person ended up choosing to download one of the 3 character Chow we already have available from the software catalog disc. There's extremely little information known about these 2 obscure events that had these 3 Chow, as there's very little about them online and most information on them is in Japanese. I found an English article about the earlier event, but it seems the writer didn't download the Chow. There's this Japanese Chow fan site that chronicles the history of Chow and mentions the 17th World Hobby Fair and the 18th, which is mistakenly called the 17th as well. There's this Sonic Team website promoting their presence at the 17th World Hobby Fair, and Sega Retro has pages on the 2 events. If you want to help with the search, then join to help Zekro and Chow Etta at the Sonic Adventureversary Central Discord server. Link is in the description below. I'm not a part of it as I don't use Discord, so I'm just here to relay this information to you. They're also working on a project to convert the ISO for the eCatalog disc to run on North American GameCubes, as it can only be run on Japanese GameCube systems, because as with every other Nintendo console before the Switch, the GameCube is region locked. Anyways, thanks to Chow Island, Book of Chow, Sega Retro, Sonic Team for keeping their old website up, and most importantly, the people who started this search and informed me about it. This game permanently ruined the reputation of Sonic the Hedgehog, and you shouldn't defend it. The earliest peek at this game was the E3 2005 trailer shown behind closed doors in May of that year. There's not much to say about it. Sonic is running through a forest fighting robots, then he winds up in a certain castle and goes super. Obviously, it seems they had already planned to have the game take place in an almost medieval European setting, which is still a strange choice for a Sonic game, but whatever. They've also already decided that unique robot designs suck and the generic machine gunner robots we see in the final are present. I wonder if they were originally gun robots, or if Eggman was planned to have taken over Gun's robots like how he takes over the Soliana lab in the final game. Or maybe they just wanted Eggman's robots to look boring because a game about a blue hedgehog had to be realistic. Actually, said blue hedgehog's design is slightly different from the final, and maybe they hadn't decided to fully commit to a realistic art direction yet. While he's stretched out, he doesn't have the thin pupils and cat eyes yet. That's all I have to say about that. Now for something completely different. Fifth Phantom Saga. What the hell is this, you ask? It was a game that was being developed by Sonic Team at the same time as Sonic 06 for the PS3. So yeah, the development team was split between this game and Sonic 06. Foreshadowing. The game was a gritty first-person shooter in which you use psychokinesis to fight enemies. I wonder what that ended up becoming.
I see it!
Yeah, the game was cancelled because it was negatively received. I mean, it was revealed around the same time as Shadow the Hedgehog. Yeah, despite what you may think looking back, gamers actually didn't want pandering gritty realism at the time. But little did they know, Sonic Team was one of the earliest to hop on this shitty trend that would plague a lot of Japanese created games for the entire 7th generation of consoles. I mean, Square Enix still hasn't recovered.
Bullshit.
Moving on, we have the 2005 Tokyo Game Show build from September of that year. It features Sonic in a very early Kingdom Valley. Sonic looks similar to how he did in the E3 trailer, and the dash panels in Spring are more stylized than they are in the final. Sonic also uses different animations that can actually be found in the final game's files. One of the most noticeable things about this footage is how the game is running slower. I don't know if this is something they did with other 3D Sonic games in their alpha stages or just this game. There's also the infamous day-night cycle. This was one of the earliest signs that Sonic Team were flying too close to the sun here. This is what the video game industry refers to as feature creep, when there's too many ideas crammed into a game, leaving the core experience unpolished. Think every Bethesda game. This is a problem with basically every 3D Sonic game, as I said before, but it's especially prevalent with this game. The problem is that they didn't know when to quit, and even after scrapping stuff like this, the final product has a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none quality to it, as all of the millions of concepts are so underbaked. Moving on, next is the E3 2006 demo. This was actually playable there, but it's currently lost as far as I know. Players could play as Sonic in Kingdom Valley and Silver in Crisis City, both of which were unfinished and shorter, with certain acts missing. The HUD is fucking terrible. There's another nice thing I can say about the final game. The HUD is competent and could have been worse. Wow, such high praise. Seriously, whose bright idea was it to just not have the timer with the score and rings like a normal fucking Sonic game? The life icon is just a generic Sonic face for both characters, and Sonic's power meter is missing, but Silver's isn't. Which means that in between June and November, the developers decided to add something they couldn't even finish because Sonic's meter doesn't even work in the final game, except for when using Elisa's shield. The font for the text is also a little different, and so is the 1-up icon. The characters also run faster, but it's still much less slippery looking than Heroes in Shadow. I don't know though, since I can't play this version, but I know for sure that some of the control problems present in the final are here, like the Castlevania jumps in Kingdom Valley's Mach Speed section. Anyways, thanks for watching. This was a compilation of some of my other videos, just in case you didn't know. If you want to see more, check out my videos on Doom Lost Media and the Lost Mega Man X prototype. I'm out. Have a great day.